The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
All right, it's episode number 89, and it is 331 days till the man burns as of this recording. So, yes, the show has been late a few times, and yes, we're finally just going to go ahead and make it official and changing the release date of the show. So, instead of the first and third Wednesday of the month, as has been historically the deadline, it'll be from now on the first and third weekend of the month. So you have to wait a couple more days. You've already been waiting a couple more days patiently since the show's been late a few times. There are many reasons for that happening, but a biggie is that my life schedule has kind of shifted and the shows just keep coming together later than they used to. There's like things to fact check. There's the scope of what we've been doing with the show has expanded. The interviews are bigger, the team is bigger, there's more people working on it, and the addition of the DJ sets has made it a bit more complex. But I'm actually having more fun than ever doing the show is the thing, and the kind of content that we're creating is more exciting than ever. And we've had conversations about it, and we want to make sure that it's done right by the time it comes out to you. And I'm getting more and more messages when a show doesn't go live on Wednesday, by the way, which I fucking love, because please do continue to kick me in the ass. I've personally mentored a few people through the experience of starting a podcast. Alkaline and Into the Fire are two of the successful case studies, but there are a few other shows that either failed to launch or have launched and aren't at all associated with the burner world, which is probably why they don't get any mentions here. And the first thing I tell people about podcasting is that it is an extremely introverted experience, on like both ends, kind of, especially at first, as it's building up steam. We listen to podcasts when we're driving or working. The instinct generally doesn't exist to jump on social media an hour in the middle of a rich conversation, to like tag people. And sometimes we think to ourselves, oh man, I'm going to tag so-and-so on this because this topic is like super on point with that thing we were talking about. And then you think, fuck it, I'll do it later when I'm done with this bike ride. And then the next episode, I don't know, the next podcast or something starts to play on whatever device you're listening to, and then you forget all about it. So anyway, my point is, thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate your feedback. Thank you for reminding me that you're out there and all this work ain't in vain. It means a lot to all of us. Nothing juices me and the production team more than sharing stories about listener interactions. Like, hey, I was at so-and-so party and so-and-so listener came up. And so-and-so, this person, was like a big fan of the show, and then they mentioned this thing that you guys said, or they really like this DJ set, So it's like, those are really cool. We love those kind of things. So please keep it up. And today's interview is gonna kind of hit on that topic a bit more, because today's guest is no stranger to touching the masses, with their consent, of course. Today's guest is Kate Houston, the rock star librarian. This is a big milestone for the show, I think, because Rockstar Librarian is one of those Burning Man iconic things that new burners obsess over as they prep for their first burn. You read up on the principles, you mix up Dr. Bronner and the human carcass wash, you try to wrap your brain around the difference between gifting and bartering, and you look up Rockstar Librarian. And I don't know, maybe I just hang out with a lot more dance music heads, but this was really such a huge treat to get Kate in the hot seat. For over 13 years, Rockstar Librarian has organized the most comprehensive music schedule available to us as we prepare for our adventure in the dust. And after kind of getting to know her a bit in today's chat, about a half hour in today's interview, we do get to Kate's kind of own personal history and we talk a lot about libraries and library sciences and the importance of organizing information because, yeah, Kate's an actual librarian, which is the most fun takeaway people have been having when I tell them that we got Rockstar Librarian on the show. We recorded the chat that you are about to hear at my place in Ocean Beach before Burning Man 2018. So you will hear us reference the burn this year, which Kate did not attend. And I did for a little while. I won't get into that story again. I'll just warn you now that you'll hear some dog coughing in the background, as well as some planes, because we're in the flight path. But no jackhammers this time, which is nice. There's a lot of reminiscing on this episode. Kate is a legit long-time burner. And I don't know how to quite articulate how refreshing I found that to be, because it feels like sometimes there's like some dismissiveness from some like veteran burners about like the dance music scene part of Burning Man. So it was nice to have legit evidence of how important dance music is to burner culture. I don't know if that makes sense. It may very well just be my own baggage. I just really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that she's like legit hardcore, legit fucking burner. And my favorite part is when we talk about how dust beats might be a new genre of music that has grown out of Burning Man. And that's so fun for me because dust beats was actually the name that Alkaline's co-founding producer Amber Rose was pushing for before we decided on Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline. So we get a real fucking wow of an ending with what Kate is doing now to take the Rockstar Librarian name to the next level. It's a really great climax to a really great interview. This was a lot of fun to record. Just a real treat to have her on the show. Stay tuned afterwards for a break set from, of all places, very timely, the 747. We often choose DJ sets based on like the energy of the guest, or if there's like some sort of a camp connection. Like we'll find something to make that connection happen between the primary interview subject and like the DJ. So like it's this like well-rounded show. But I often ask the guest if they have a DJ set that they really like before we go hunting for one. And Kate absolutely loves the one that you're going to hear today from DJ Dane from the 747. We may or may not be working on a 747 interview, by the way. Can't share too much just yet. But don't worry about that right now. Let's get into today's episode, which we decided to simply title Rockstar Librarian. That name is just too iconic not to be super direct. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There were sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name, and it felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, because there ain't no one for to give you no name.
So you're not burning this year?
No, you're right. I am not. I am doing a stretch goal for me, and going 18th year to burn, even though I love it, is not a personal stretch for personal growth. It's fun, and I enjoy it, and I do a lot of amazing things out there and see a lot of amazing people, and that's why I love it. It's going and meeting all the people that I get to meet, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really about the people for me, and the art, and like the interactions and the connection. And so, yeah, I don't have enough vacation with all these other projects that I'm doing. and revving up my entrepreneurial business and taking an amazing leadership program that is like life altering, that's like shifting mindset. I've done plenty of personal growth,
Right.
but this is experiential, where you literally get to, you may have believed something or understood something in your head psychologically, but once you do the experience where it's experiential, where it's a mind, body, heart thing, you really get to feel it and then release it, if that makes sense. And so there's some real depths of ownership and accountability and responsibility, and letting go of any old stories, any old limiting beliefs, any old kind of victim mentality that may sneak in language and conversation, and being in integrity with, first and foremost, myself, and then with others, you know. Yeah. But I mean, I kind of already lived a lot of that, but this just tightens things up a bit, and you kind of like, to make it more laser focused, so that I can hit my goals. And
there's kind of like a consistent trajectory, I feel like, that a lot of people in our community have been following for a long time. And because like a lot of what you just referenced right now about the leadership program that you're doing, a lot of people would say about their burn experience. Yeah. You know, like it pushed them to like step outside their comfort zones and then reevaluate sort of some of their ideas about what life is and what success is and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's still, if we're not careful, if we're not conscious, it becomes another box to live in. And then we're not questioning the box. So is it any more of an experimental community, or is it now just the community that we've created and now it's so known? It's the place we live now, right? And so where do we keep challenging? I feel like it's been interesting to see the experiment in community, which I don't know if anybody actually still calls it that, which is what it was originally called, the Burning Man Festival. I don't even know if it was called a festival at first. I just called it a city. And we were citizens and had civic responsibility in being a part of the citizenry of the city. So, which I think was a missed opportunity. And maybe the last 8 years even, where I felt like that message wasn't, it was sort of part of the propaganda in the early days. Right. That you were joining a citizenry, that you were participating and had civic responsibility. So I think that message, I don't know if it's in maybe some of the literature, but it wasn't really pushed as a thing, or maybe camps didn't push it, or I don't really know what, but I was drawn to that. Right. And so the idea of being there for my campmates, the side campmates, you know, like your neighbors and across the way, or, you know, there's about tolerance and connection rather than bitching and complaining about somebody's something too noisy here, or their movie happening late at night when you're a sunrise camp, or you know what I mean? Like, it was about, you know, what can we do to connect and work together to find a common peace. Right. But you feel that in the past 8 years there's been a bit of
there's a lot of changes happening. Shift. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's going to evolve. Period. I think there's been some interesting things. I loved Burning Man when I first went. When every year you never knew what camps were going to be there. Right. Because people never brought the same theme camp. We never brought the same theme camp. I mean, we always changed up because the creativity was to challenge ourselves to do something new and different. Now, I think around the .com bust is when everybody went, holy crap, and had to save resources, and then they saved infrastructure, which totally makes sense, you know, followed the economy. Sure. And then things started to, quote, return. And then somehow things got placed in the same place, which that's a org decision for whatever the reason. And maybe a placer could share insight in that. That's kind of would be interesting. But when you then expect things, you expect things. Right. And then there's a bit of entitlement. Yeah. That naturally is unconscious in us as just human beings if you don't catch it. But if you were moved around, even if you came back, it was still changing the city. So I feel like you can expect some things to consistently be in the same places now. And it's interesting. That might be also civic placement because of moving of people. Right. I don't think people think about, like, the placers are really working hard to place camps to not have such a consolidated number of people in one place that could cause emergency services issues, sanitation issues, if like only two sets of porta potties are used ever,
Yeah.
and they're not serviced enough, then we're shut down. Like there's these, like you don't probably think of things like that.
Right.
Or if too many bikes are in the way, then they're another way we're going to be shut down because too many things are being drawn to too many events in the same concentrated area. So it's fun to think about it as a city planner, you know, and that's one of the things I take into account. I mean, besides the things that I like to highlight that people don't know about. I don't need to highlight things that people know about.
Right.
You all know about certain parties at certain nights or day parties that you all go to or certain places you always enjoy. But to get to highlight things that you don't know about and move you about the city and seeing and hearing different things is cool for me.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy that.
I think like a lot of what you're describing, I would imagine like a part of, for anything to be able to grow and to expand, like part of what happens is that certain wheels you want to kind of like stop reinventing, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of like a basic, I don't know, a basic kind of a observation of how design in general works. When you look at design of reality, design of art, design of a city, it's consistency and variation, right? So like they're trying to establish some levels of consistency so that they can utilize that to build other variation around it. So I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously a much later generation.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering if there was an org decision about
Right.
that, whereas before it was they did place people, but it was really random, and there was something about that was really cool.
Well, there was a lot less people.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier to keep more people around.
But I mean, like, you know, like that you just because you've always been a established camp doesn't mean you always get X corner or whatever.
Right.
And like people can find you.
Right.
And I'm, you know, like it's just funny for me because like in 2011 when they had evolution of the evolution was the theme, I think.
Yeah.
So I did
Yeah.
evolution of burner was the theme, and I organized with a couple art cars to do a quote old school rave, which was like we're just gonna like get by, you know, middle of inner play, even it wasn't even out anywhere, but we made people go to the laser clock tower, and they had to ask for Zed in a name tag. It was a mini mart name tag,
Right.
and ask for where the party was, because that's how that used to happen, and that's why I think people didn't ever get to a party till 3 a.m. is because it took them 6 hours to get there. And so there was a resilience and grit and rigor about people wanting to get to the thing in the past. And it was interesting because so many people they were standing around this clock and they weren't even asking, is anybody seeing? They weren't playing the game. They weren't playing. Like, it's like they showed up, but were too nervous to play. And I feel like density is cool in a lot of ways, but I'm not sure if the teaching of the new burners has happened to keep up with the growth, because you're supposed to question everything and like be able to play in it. And I feel like people are worried about being wrong.
Right.
There's a lot more of like, I don't want to do it wrong. I don't want to be in trouble. And I'm thinking, this is Burning Man. Nothing you can do can do that. So I found that interesting that there's that feeling. And so I'm not sure if there's just time for people to mentor folks through that experience, so you don't have to like worry about getting it wrong.
That's like the fear of judgment. I mean, at the end of the day, is like the ultimate fear that the overwhelming majority of human beings have.
Yeah.
Like I've without getting into too many details, have been in a position to be a support base for multiple people on bad trips. And when you strip away all the stuff that they're freaking out about, at the end of it, when you strip away all the layers, it all always goes back to the same thing. It's a fear of being judged.
Yeah.
What are people saying about me? Why are people looking at me?
Yeah.
You know, it's and this fear, this thing that exists. And like, that's a tough one to teach people.
Yeah.
Is that new?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I
that's
think
new.
it was just that people, when we all went and we got to see everybody doing whatever they wanted, we just did whatever. And I don't know if it's a generational thing, as a Gen Xer of screw you, I do whatever I want anyway. Maybe that's a cultural thing that was brought in to those first years in Nevada. I don't know, because that's just the experience I had. But, and I'm sure it had something to do with that. But I think there's there's a lot with later generations to be more hive-minded and unity-minded and groups decision-making and consensus, because of like literally teachers got, instead of sitting in rows of desks like I did in my generation, you were sat in like pods. That was like revolutionary, right? So I think that there's maybe some of that, but trying to help people know that like you can do whatever you want, or
Right.
you know, having burners say, I was told I had to wait here and at Burning Man. Why? For what? Because I have to wait to blah 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 blah. And I'm like, no, you don't. Well, they sounded like they were in charge, and
Yeah.
you're in charge of you.
Yeah,
Like giving
yeah.
them permission to be in charge of their own decisions.
I would say that interaction that you're having with that individual is exactly the point.
Yeah.
Because the earlier generations, I mean, I would imagine part of it is that there was a much stronger presence from like sort of the Cacophony Society energy. So there was a lot more people who had, for lack of a better description, improv practice. Like they knew how to improv. They understood theater. Whereas like there's probably newer generations of people coming in that, you know, they might have been coming in for specifically the techno.
Yeah.
And like they didn't have any experience with what improv art was like, and
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in high school theater, but
Yeah.
I was like,
so you
I
already had more experience with it than the average person.
Oh, I don't know about
Yeah.
that. My theater was this. I played Buddha in The King and I.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
You're a
That was
librarian
it.
and a theater geek, so you
And I got to be trees and rain. Like that was
Yeah.
not high level theater experience.
Sure.
by
No,
any
I get
means.
it.
But the idea of play,
Right,
you
right.
know, and giving people permission to play, and that what I would like to see, and I don't know, but we just saw lots of people experiment with performance art and not worry about getting it right or wrong. And I think one of the things that's happened is there were a lot, because we were small at the beginning, 1998, 14,000 people.
Yeah.
There were small camps, and when you saw a small camp do something interesting that made you go, "Oh my God!" in a carport, that is, I could mirror and see myself in that experience to say I can do something like that next year.
Right.
But as a newbie who walks in this year to something that's like a 6th level, I don't know, firehouse with crazy, like it's beautiful.
Right.
But there's a leap that they have to make to see. I mean, I don't think they can see, oh, I can do that next year. And that really some of the most amazing camps I've ever participated in were really inexpensive, like when you thought about their setup, you know. And that you don't have to start huge or join something huge. You can do a small camp with high interactivity. It's just fun and quirky and playful, you know? So
you see a lot of that evolution in general. Like the thing that sticks out to me the most is like the fashion. I mean, the way that I sort of like experienced it was you're going out to an environment that's going to beat the shit out of your clothes. So you might as well, you know, get stuff from thrift stores, get them dirt cheap because it's not going to survive, and try to create some sort of art with what you've put together, right? Yeah. And don't spend too much money on it because you're going to destroy it.
Yeah.
Flash forward to today, and there is very much a Burning Man fashion style, and you'll pay easily hundreds of dollars for brand new clothing, very specifically to wear out there.
Yeah.
So
it's cool. I mean, I think there's there's a lot of pieces to that, you know, to find your uniqueness and what fits for you, even if it's something you see somebody's had.
Right.
How can you make it your own and own it for you? You know, I think that's amazing. I mean, you definitely see trends for things, right?
Sure.
And I think, like, for me, I really am a firm believer that the infamous Burning Man fur coat began in 2000. Yeah. 1999 was the impetus, because in 1999, I was there for my second year. There were 5 of us. It rained a couple nights. I'm from the Northwest, so we walked around. Very few people were walking. And one night was 30 degrees. And oh my God, nobody wanted to get out of a tent to go walk to the portos because I'm going to die. And so then you wait, and then you shouldn't wait because, you know, it's that bad. Catch-22. So we're like, we're never going to freeze again. And I think it's really interesting when the weather happens, when things were super hot, I guess, like last year, it was like, it was 115 degrees. I don't know if it was that hot, but people were...
It was a pain in the ass because I wanted to wear my coat and I fucking couldn't.
I heard it was legendarily hot. So what I thought was so interesting is that if you pay attention to what happens at theme camps the next year, so the years it was cold, well, let me back up. So for a number of years, there were lots of chill places and chill domes and puddle cuddle places. And then we had about a stint of 8 years where it was always hot. So there were no places to go when it was cold because it wasn't ever cold to have to go find shelter at a camp and be in a chill space.
Right.
So then, like, I don't know if it was, maybe it was 2015 it was chill. I forget, one of the last couple of years. And my girlfriends are like, where's the chill domes? There's no place to cuddle. Where's the cuddle domes? Like, because we realized, because the weather hadn't been that way for several years, people weren't building that. So we were like, maybe next year because it's cold this year. But there's some. But it's just interesting to see like how weather affects the fashion, affects how people think of building, because everything comes off of an idea of, oh my God, I really wish I had this year. We should do that.
Right.
Historically. So it's all based on the experiences they're having.
The pendulum swings back and forth pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like I remember like one year we just like, I felt like we could not stop ending up at small bars. And we're like, I want to find like a bigger dance floor. And then the following year, I felt like we could not find a small bar. And all we could find were like bigger dance floors and bigger clubby settings. So it could entirely be that we're projecting that on our situation. But it does feel like what you're describing, like every year, like somebody's like, hey, you know what? There aren't enough small bars here. Next year we should bring a bar. But then, 5,000 people think the same thing. So everybody fills it up with it.
Yeah, and I think, like my family camp that I've been a part of the last few years is emergency, and we basically play doctor. It's a fake medic tent, and we do intake, and we have like the pharmacy. It's the bar. Yeah. And we have sexy change operations, which is basically if somebody's walking down the street and they're too beautiful, we go and we maybe give them a unibrow or a mustache, because it's about play and allowing yourself to be in a different space, and that we're just being silly, and it's sort of a throw to fuckery, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of activities that we do around that. We intake people and ask them funny questions. We do shock therapy with sarongs are dipped in ice cold water, and they're on cots, and we cool people down in the hot sun. And it's just, we get to play doctor like you're a preschooler. Yeah. I mean, that's like the cool thing. And then we get to interact with people. We make friends. Some people join in. They come in. We want to be a part of your camp. You're so fun because you're having interactions and meeting people. Yeah. And because there's something fun to do. There's something besides just, coming up to the bar, which there's lots of places that are great just for that too. But it's fun when there's a purpose, like a greater interactivity too, right? And I love seeing, I just love my camp for that, because they've just kept it that way and been silly and fun and light and not taking themselves too seriously, I'll walk. I mean, I think one year I was wearing we had scrubs, a scrub top and hot pants or something with all of our gear on, and I literally had a unibrow and a mustache, a dirty mustache, drawn on with a eyebrow pencil. It wasn't good looking at all. And I walked around district. I walked around district like I was owning it, and people were like, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do with you." And I'm like, "I'm having fun," because for me, and maybe it's taking me. I mean, I'm older than probably the typical Bernie now going, but it's taking me a long time just to be comfortable in my own skin and just play and have fun. And I don't know. I want to be. I feel more approachable when I'm silly.
I'm going to say definitely not than the typical burner. Maybe the typical district attendee.
Who, me?
Yeah. Age-wise, I think that's
maybe?
That's the thing that attracted me. Yeah, no, that's the thing that attracted me to the burner community to begin with, was that, because this is, Burning Man is, in my eyes, in my description, it's not its own culture. It is an umbrella that's held over lots and lots of smaller cultures. Yeah. So I think even for example, the earlier days experiences is because there's less sub-communities there. It was still more of an overlap. Now there's more and more people from a lot of different communities that have come under the same umbrella. You have who knows, the polyamory community, the kink community, the ravers, the house heads, the old school cacophony types, the theater people, all these different people have come together under the same umbrella.
Yeah. The libertarians.
Right, yeah.
The seriously.
Sure, yeah. No, all of these. Uh-huh. But I think the one thing, because there's all these different age groups too. Yeah. That was the big thing that drew me in. I love that there's all these different age groups, and it's something it's pretty common in artist communities. Yeah. You could be 70 or 20. The one thing, in my opinion, that unites all burners is the singular agreement that there is no age limit to play. Okay. It's never that you're like, oh, you know what, I'm too old for this. Oh, you know what, I can't do this thing anymore. I can't go dancing at midnight in the middle of the desert because it's past my time. And I think that's if I had to pick the one thing that we all pretty much agree on. It's that one thing that there is no age limit to play.
Yes, and I think that the one, the only limiter there is when we're self-limiting.
Right, absolutely.
Because there are a lot of people who would say, oh, feel too old maybe to do that, or I'm too young to that, or I don't, I think it's where we are in our evolution of how you play the game. Right?
Because also the definition of play can change.
Yeah.
Play can be, I would like to play with art. I would like to play with clothing. I would like to play with relationships. I would like to play in the desert, And
it's a tolerance community. The whole idea is really built on, as long as people are in a consent and nobody's getting hurt that's out of consent, or that something is being pushed on them and they don't want that.
Right.
Where it's literally illegal, like children and certain things. That's where I know Burning Man had a big line drawing as far as like things being projected at kids or screamed at kids when they don't have the cognitive ability to understand that this is a game or a experiment.
Right.
So that was, I know some things they've stepped in from that before, but it's the limiters that we put on ourselves. Like, what is it? And I mean, I love it. It's like, where else can you go? And if you're interested, like I was like, I'm gonna go to suspended animation and watch them just do the tying up of people and be curious about it, because I'm like, I don't know what I really want to be tied up. And I mean, I literally sat there for the hour and a half, and this is so funny because it was beautiful and artistic. But all I kept thinking is she's been up there for an hour and a half, and all I wanted, if that would be me, all I want to do is pee. I'm cold. Half of my leg is numb. None of that is sexy. So it was just like, obviously you'd have a conversation with your partner about that kind of thing, but I just was like, oh, this is so funny that I got all like funny and practical about it. But where can you go in and have a clinical experience because they were doing a workshop to see if you like something or not.
Yeah.
Where in other places it might feel taboo, where you would walk into places and or not feel safe. I could go in there as a female alone, sit down and not be concerned about my boundaries and comfort zone being crossed,
Absolutely.
Which is great. So I think that's really where people get to explore. I love that there's tolerances and openness to learning, that people will ask questions and say, well, tell me more about it, and people are really open and amazing to share why things work for them and whatever the thing is that they're asking about. And so it's an opportunity to really learn about yourself and question things and have fun and decide if you want to play in certain ways or not, and try something you can decide you don't like it. And people are just more beautiful out there because they're walking in their authenticity.
Absolutely.
Whether they're wearing a specific outfit that really reflects who they are, or they've donned something that's really that might seem unexpected for the type of, like somebody in a wheelchair doing something wildly sensual, and people's like, not in our default world is that something that we are allowed to appreciate, but to get to see somebody being authentic and seeing the beauty of that however they're doing whatever they're doing is what I love.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm curious, you said your first year is 98?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me about life in your world prior to that. What was the road to Burning Man?
Let's see. Goodness.
You were a drama geek in high school.
Yeah. Well, I was a choir geek, actually.
Okay.
I sang.
Big music.
I'm a big music fan, which is why I also like doing the guide. And then I'm a real librarian. I don't know if we covered that, but I'm an actual librarian with a master's in library science. And so I'm a fan of music, and I organize information. That's how the guide kind of began. So people often say, you're really a librarian? I'm like, oh my God, how would you do this otherwise? I don't know. Or people say, well, aren't you in the music industry? Well, no, I'm just a fan and I love music. And so I was a choir geek,
Right. Can you talk about that some more? Like about how you got started in your career in library science?
I sure can. Well, I was going to be a teacher, elementary school teacher, and had been doing my prereqs for that at the state school. And with budget cuts that happened, the teachers were being laid off. So right before I was going to graduate and go to get a master's degree. And so I thought, well, I could either not teach here.
And this is in the Northeast?
In Oregon.
Okay.
And so I could either not teach and not have a job and still get this degree or figure out what I want to do. And my cousin actually works at the public library. And she said, why don't you look at being a librarian? And so I looked at that, and being classically brought up in the American dream of finding a stable job, that this 20th century value that my parents had. The American dream is get the stable job with the benefits and the, quote, pension.
Yeah.
And so...
Nice and safe.
Yeah, that's all I knew. So I, at 21 was looking... No, maybe about 20.
Can I tell you one fun thing that I know about librarians? Yeah. I was an insurance agent in a previous life. Librarians got some of the lowest rates. Very, very safe drivers. So sorry, continue.
That's awesome. Yeah. So so I was interested, and she said look into it, and I saw that I could do many different jobs within that. So I like job diversity. Was really like I could actually get a job, and if there were no jobs in this sector, I could apply things. So that was nice, and I thought I'd just explore that. And then I went to the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC, and it was awesome. And I was actually in library school when the internet as we know it was born.
Oh, wow. Meaning
with Mosaic, the browser for clickable optical access rather than, scrolling and tabbing.
Wow, yeah, okay.
So that was 1995. So it was a pretty big revolutionary thing that happened while I was in library school that we saw the face of information changing from the minute that happened.
Yeah.
And then I got to see it from the birth on has been super nerdy and awesome.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Could you, because the librarian's brain, I would imagine, is kind of preordained to constantly be organizing information. You're attracted to that because your mind kind of works that way.
Sort of. I actually have a very abstract random mind. I may actually have ADHD too, although I've never been diagnosed. I'm wondering that. Because I have so many things. Squirrel. No, I can focus.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't catalog a book. I would totally fail at it. I barely passed my cataloging classes for library school, even with a good partner.
Right.
But it's more, I think, for me, I love the idea of intellectual freedom. And that who else besides lawyers gets to stand up for our First Amendment rights and the Bill of Rights on a daily basis in their personal life, in their job? Me. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. To make sure people have a right to freedom of thought and expression. So, and I think people don't actually think about there's a two-sided coin to the First Amendment, that it's freedom of speech and expression, so that you have a right to receive, to create it, that you as the artist, you as the writer, you as the musician, but it also protects you as the receiver of information and accessing of that. So it's sort of twofold, and people don't think of that. So you have the right to view, to watch, to listen, read, and experience. And decide for yourself how to make that fit into your world, or what pieces to take and unfold into your belief systems.
Right, yeah.
So it's cool. If you don't have the materials on the shelves to do that questioning, then you don't have the opportunity to really evolve. Right?
Were these thoughts that you were having in those earlier times? Or
a part of school was learning some of the theory. So there's the practical stuff. I always have a bag of kitty litter around because you always have somebody vomiting at some point. Literally, that was a lesson. Yeah. In public library class.
Wow.
Which is funny because, it's a public building. Yeah. And then, two, the theory of, high theory of how to stand up for intellectual freedom and access and equality for all, and that there isn't this tiered information, which clearly we didn't know how important that would be, of course, with net neutrality and other things that come along with the internet, and that how things have unfolded, and, now they're at the point of trying to pass that, I think, to be covered again. But the internet playing a role in that's been pretty big, and it's interesting to see how we've all, and I'm saying me too, because I'm human, given up privacy and control for convenience. Yeah. And that we really don't read those app permissions. And I did a presentation with families, and a parent pulled up one that was a emoji. Everybody likes changing their emoji, getting an emoji app or getting a different keyboard app. It was something very innocuous like that. And when she read the permissions, she said, I'm giving them permission to read my bank statements. Some of, probably the bigger ones that get higher scrutiny are probably more aligned with being more integral, maybe.
Right.
But some of the one-offs,
Because like Apple will get like public pressure.
Yeah.
But if it's like some emoji keyboard thing
Yeah.
from some company you've never even heard of before,
Yeah.
that's terrifying.
Yeah, and actually it's true. And it's just really interesting. So, I mean, I do it too, I used to add apps in there too, but we don't have time to read or understand all of the legalese that's there. It's just kind of crazy. But, your librarians are still there to help you find information. I mean, we can find stats and other things much faster, but if you really want to dig deep and get into things, there's some pretty amazing people out there that know how to do that and get you that pretty efficiently.
Yeah, that's fascinating that this the image of like the like the little old librarian with like the little round glasses, that's always just saying shh, that's for whatever reason that's ingrained into popular consciousness, but in general most librarians that we spoke to there is a very purpose-driven it is a purpose-driven career.
Yeah.
It is about the importance of freedom of speech, like you're describing, and it's pretty fascinating.
Well, just the idea of access for all, because everybody has the equal access to information. It's a free library. You don't subscribe to it. I mean, the Carnegie libraries that began in the early 1900s is what's really started the concept of shifting public libraries to being a free public library in the States. There were subscription libraries here like there had been in Europe, but it was really interesting to see that shift so that anybody can learn and read and absorb, whether it's information or pleasure reading. And of course, as people had more leisure time, right, they had more time to do that exploration and stuff. So it's been pretty interesting to see that shift, but we have a big tenets about education, access for all. Our library has a lot of libraries are forces behind equity and inclusion, which is a big push to provide equality and equity and inclusion for different vulnerable populations, whether it be immigrants or communities in specific cities that have been constantly oppressed historically,
I had firsthand experience with that a few years ago when I was still smoking. I got pulled over and ticketed for throwing a cigarette butt out the window. And this is my earlier burning days. Yeah. And I remember like the cop wrote me this ticket, right? And he's like, you can't do that. You can't. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why do I fucking do that? And so immediately I remember at some point I was talking to Kurt and Stephanie, actually, who Stephanie was on the previous episode of this show. And they're smokers. And they were saying, they whip out their tin. They're putting their cigarette butt away in the tin. And this is in default world. And I remember that was like one example, this experience I had of people taking lessons from the burn and bringing it out to default in order to be better citizens of the world at large. So I ended up getting public service instead of whatever it ended up. The judge gave me that public service thing, and I ended up having to go volunteer in a central library. And what a deeply fascinating and rewarding experience it was, because the central library, all I was doing for listeners, this, but for listeners, basically all day long, there's books coming in from different libraries around the county because somebody in like some other part of the county has requested this book. So like an example of that would be someone in rural eastern San Diego County needs a book on how to write a resume. And that their library doesn't have it. So they're requesting it, and that book gets transferred to them from a library like, next county over. And because this person doesn't have like access to the internet. Like one of the things that we take for granted is our access to the internet. How many people, even here in Western culture, don't have that? It's fascinating. And there's these volunteers and all these people working all day to pass this information along. It was really incredible to watch people do this work.
The actual materials movement is probably the most expensive thing public libraries do. Because people do not have transportation, or even if they can do public, they don't have the time to do it, because the people most who have public transportation probably also work not the 9-to-5 job, probably work 2 or 3 jobs. And so giving them access to wherever is closest to them is really key.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about libraries a whole bunch.
So I know we got stuck in the library, sorry.
No, this
get back to Burning Man.
Totally normal. Okay, so Librarian, at some point, Burning Man comes into your consciousness. You're introduced to it somehow. Was it through a book? No. I think it's because my boyfriend at the time and some friends,
they went in 97. It was like a sudden, like last minute decision. Working at a county job, you have to request time off in advance. And so I didn't get to go. And then they talked about it incessantly for the whole freaking year, and we wanted to kill them.
Yeah.
We all have that experience.
Yes.
And we're like, you're going to ruin it. I don't want to go. Whatever. And I mean, of course, well, fine, we'll go. And we created like a very small art project, which was this is what I mean. You can do very small things for your first art project. It was 3 college mirrors that we created a kaleidoscope, from, connected into a triangle. And then at the back side, we made a box where we put a laptop and had a psychedelic kind of screensaver on it that moved. And we put music in it and had powered from a generator. And like, it was just a long like kaleidoscope with music that you could stick your head in.
Okay.
I made a little notebook.
Cool.
I made a little notebook by it just for people to say like hi or whatever, just write your experience. I mean, all these people like, this is so cool. I stumbled on this. This is fun. And we totally brought people by. So we weren't even home and got people to hear what people thought of it, which was fun. So that was kind of like, you could have a really, really simple idea of just bringing joy to people in that kind of a way. And like, none of us are super artsy or builder people, like my crew people weren't necessarily. So we were just coming with an idea and doing it.
Right.
And then, I was trying to even remember my first year I don't know if it stands out from first, second, kind of in third. Well, first and second kind of blend together.
I always like asking about if you have a memory of their first night or first day or first night, something that just really just punched you right in the gut about, holy shit, look where I am.
Well, it wasn't, for many, many years, there wasn't anything between I will say the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock back in the day. There was nothing, there was no art in Inner Playa. Yeah. There was a couple pieces of art, but there was no there wasn't lots of sparkly things to keep your attention in the open playa. There was some stuff, but there were
no LEDs yet.
Yeah, I mean, there was no temple. The man burned on Sunday, not Monday. So, to see that shift, and like the whole point of the guide was that we would walk from 3 to 9, and that it was cold when it actually was cold all the time at night, because we hadn't changed the thermal patterns with all the heat and propane and whatever we have to make our city. We bring all that heat and we change the weather pattern. I totally know we do that. So when there weren't that many people, we had bigger dust storms all night. Like, I don't remember the last time there was like a 6-hour, 8-hour all-night dust storm. Like, all night. Where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
Right, right.
And you still went out. And you still went and did things and saw things and went dancing,
Why is that? Is it because more things are breaking it up?
I think literally it's body heat, equipment heat, more gasoline. Like, a city makes more radiation, right? So you have more bodies, you radiate heat hot. And it changes this temperature of the city and changes, I believe. So I don't know if that changes why it would change the wind per se, but like, I just don't feel like we've had the nighttime dust storms that we used to have.
That's interesting.
At that level. Yeah. And we didn't know any better, so it was like, well, let's either stay in your tent, which tents suck, and we all stayed in tents for several years, or you go out. So you didn't have a comfy RV to say, well, I'll just stay in because it's, gross out. You just like, well, I'm going to go out because this is sucky in a tent. Yeah. So, which in some ways is really good to force you out of there and your camp. And so I think I just remember seeing like camels. The man was on hay bales. Dogs were allowed for several years, before they weren't when I was first there. There was definitely more openness to public displays of affection. And it was interesting in that I never felt like anything I ran into was jarring. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was just like, if you didn't want to watch, you didn't. Like, and if they're doing something in the middle of wherever you are, then it's a choice, right? And I remember just seeing one year there was a large man base that was stairs. I forget, maybe it was 05 or 07. And they had alcoves in it where people could hang out. Mm-hmm. And there was this amazing couple. Like, I knew we had to wait a long line to walk up, a long line to walk up to the base of the man. It was one on, one off kind of thing. And there's this beautiful couple that was just making love. And you're like, how do you not watch that? They're so in love. Like, it was about how they were being in love together. And of course, it was sexy. But that was a beauty that was really cool that we don't have anymore. And I mean, I understand that because there's so many more kids and other things that that are of concern, because I don't know, it was just such an interesting thing. So there's some rawness that we lose, but there's also some amazing things that we didn't have, the big art that we have today. So I mean, there's a trade-off, it's just evolution and change, and that there's different guidelines that go on. And I think I appreciated having had that opportunity, especially knowing now that it's not there. I think it was really just meeting amazing people. There weren't a ton of art cars driving around. There were some, but it wasn't, I don't even know. There were some maybe that gave rides.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah.
They probably weren't
we weren't expecting rides though.
No.
We really saw it as a gift and not as transportation. We really saw it as an opportunity to jump on and get to know the people who were creating whatever it was, and to spend that time talking. If they took us somewhere great, and we did an art car in 2003, which would never ever be DMV'd today. Oh my God, never,
what
ever.
Was it?
It was, we took an old Toyota truck and cut out the top and made a Pope-mobile top so you could stand in it and wave. And then the back of it, we had created like a mister and a fan, like it's a fan that would not, it's redundant, right? And so we, and seating, and then we had the trailer as more seating. We built that out. And so it was reticulated, that wouldn't, be safe either today probably. But that was really fun to get to do that and to talk to people and to ride around and meet people jumping on and off rather than going to places and meeting people. So that was neat. And I think really the year that I remember the most as my first real deep memory, just because this first year's was exploring and participating and figuring out what can we do, is that we were a center camp, which was like out of nowhere, the third year in 2000. Black Rock City Hall of Justice, and I swear our space was probably the size of your living room here for the whole camp. It was 14 of us, a Costco carport in a corner, a center camp, and like, it looked like the Black Rock City Hall of Justice. We took a Costco carport, put up 2 PVC spires with the atom symbols, and we decided we were going to hold court and judge people. So what we said, if you have a grievance, we will judge you and make a decision for you. If you can't if you can't come to a decision together.
So people came to you with disagreements?
Yeah, it was really cool. And the best part was we were like, oh my God, that we had made, I think in 97, and then we knew them in 98 and 99, we'd made friends with the Postal Service because there's some people out of Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, and some other places. They just bonded with them that year. And so we were always like, we need to do something with the Postal Service. So we sent out jury notifications to Burning Man in 2000 and said to the Postal Service, just randomly hand them out. I mean, if you get a jury notification at Burning Man, do you show up?
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants jury duty, but it was either just a party.
I would so show up for that. That's fantastic.
Or we get to have court. And so...
And I would want my parking validated.
Oh my God. And this is what I mean by like, people really brought it, and I didn't know that they were going to bring this kind of experience. And I know this happens, and this is sort of the serendipity when people have these experiences where camps kind of connect up that didn't know they would. Like the camp that I remember the most that was the best fun was called Dante versus Dante. Dante's Retirement Center Camp versus Dante's Inferno Camp, wanting the rights to the name Dante for their camp. So it was an intellectual property argument that I'm totally loving as a librarian. And so they came, but what it was is that, I mean, this is what I mean where like people showed up to play.
Yeah.
The Dante's Inferno came in their total like goth feathers and, dark black on their faces and skulls, and they had the Dante talking skull because he's a witness.
Yeah.
I mean, and Dante's Doddering Retirement Center, if I got the name right, they showed up in a short bus, drove into center camp, and came off of it as all young people dressed as old people. With hair and reds, the glasses with fake teeth, and dentures. And one guy had the old time the horn that you put to your ear for the old. I can't hear you, Sonny. Gotta see. And everybody stayed. I mean, people were wearing Depends, and it looked like poop was sliding down their legs. They brought it. And it wasn't about looking beautiful. It was about taking an idea to the most ridiculous level. Yeah. And they showed up, and we did this whole bearing the witnesses. And people were agreeing and disagreeing and arguing. It was great. And then we totally judged them, which was great. And the end result was that Dante is out of copyright because of the public domain. Anybody can use the name Dante. Yeah. But we had this great conversation. But I mean, that was like, they were two camps that already did things on their own. And then it was sort of like I got to butt heads in court, you know, and it was so fun. And so that's the stuff I love. Great. It's like, and we opened the door to that by saying, and then the jury was there that had to make decisions, right? And like they got to experience that by showing up and saying, what's going to happen if I go to this weird thing? And trusting that something crazy might happen.
That's so great.
So that's one of my favorite camps, just because early on we really kind of stepped it up for participation. And the whole idea with being, you know, with the city was the civic responsibility. You have a civic duty to your city. So that was kind of the idea that you have a civic responsibility to show up for juries. And we even had we had official stamps, and like we ran into down the street was like a chapel that did weddings, and so we had ended up knowing, I don't know why, I think we knew this ahead of time when we could find out a little bit ahead of, there was a time when you knew where your camp neighbors might be before they stopped letting, I don't know, I forget what the line was where you didn't really know before you went to burn about where camps were. But I think we knew that there was a church down there doing weddings, and so we brought the civic agreement that you need to fill out to get married, and so they would have to come get it, fill it out, take it back to the church, have them do a stamp, and then they would come back to us and then it was like, oh, I'm sorry, there's just too much red tape, isn't there? And we would put an X of red tape across it and send them back home with it. So like, okay, now, and then once they got the red tape at the church, they could get married. So it was like this circle, and we were like a block away. It was not like hard, right? So, I don't know. And then we just sort of always wanted to do something different every year because we were inspired every year by so many different things that if I brought the same thing, it's not challenging me and it's not showing up for my community different. And that was how kind of I think we all began. Yeah. Like I said, and I think that we didn't have, a Costco carport and PVC pipe, that's not like high infrastructure costs. Right. So things were smaller, period. And then, in 2003, we had the art car, and we were Black Rock Hotel and Casino. It looked like the Hard Rock Cafe. We had 2 domes. And one was Black Rock City memorabilia, so I had contacted a whole bunch of camps that had already old Burning Man memorabilia, like 5 years old, and we'd hung like you have memorabilia for music in one of the domes. And then we did like bingo, and we did weddings and funerals, and we even had a casket like you could lay in, like one of those old like the pine shaped like you'd see in your horror movies. That's the shape. And it was all padded, and people would go in there and take a nap and close the lid because there was no dust. It was a dust storm year, like every year. Yeah. And like they were like, I've been reborn with sleep, we just laughed about it. And we had some of the most amazing experiences from that we didn't even know the level of elevation of how we'd touch people's lives by just showing up and offering something. Is in 2003, we ended up marrying a number of couples that were same-sex couples because it was before you could get married legally, and they were bringing their families here to make this their legal ceremony for themselves. Wow! And so we got to participate in that, and then just the beauty of that and touching lives that way. And we had created ceremonies. We had a little choir. Me and a couple other gals, we sang songs. They could pick out their songs they wanted. They could pick out if they, what the ceremony they wanted to have read. And some of them were funny. Some of them were sensitive. And, we had all of it in there so people could have really a fun time with it. And so we always had a form of interactivity because it just, like, I wanted to meet people. I'm not going out there just to hang out with the people I see all the time. And then, I don't know, we just kept going from there and doing a bunch of different things. And so we've stepped it up. And then I kind of was a leader. Like, I think this is the thing that happens for burners who've gone a long time. You're like, you get excited, you're building a camp, you're a doer. Then you get somehow, lassoed into leading the camp. And how like crap did that happen one year? Yeah. And then you do it once or twice, you go, God, never again, right? And the size of your camp gets to about 55 is like an ideal, 45 or 55. And if you max at 70, you about bust. And then you burst into little baby bubbles of camps because after you get to a certain size, depending on what you're doing, I guess. Right. But sort of the organicness that I recall from the early days was like once it got kind of past 70, you didn't know people. And then people would want to branch off and do things, and that's when camps would break up and do other things. And it wasn't a bad thing. I was like, baby burners are off on their own. They're free. They're out of the nest. It was awesome. And so
it's with any city, right? A city grows to a certain size. It starts to become little neighborhoods.
And I
they
loved
pick up
it when they wanted to create something different. In 07,
Yeah.
on 07 we had Bob Barker's Boulevard of Broken Games, where he did a takeoff of all the Price is Right games to play a spoof off of monetary things in a non-monetary community.
Yeah.
So we had Putting for Paps, and we had Ski Bowl, where it was a bowling ball. They had to fit for, like, it literally could almost not fit. We made it impossible. And one guy actually got it in, and we were, like, amazed. So I made Drinko instead of Plinko. Yeah, so it was fun. And
obviously,
that was the year that our camp set up the dome, but didn't set the stakes down before they put the parachute on it. And the dome got caught in a windstorm, and it turned sideways and became a wheel.
Oh, wow.
And proceeded to just roll down the road. And, like, people were grabbing onto it, and, like, it was pulling them up, and they were getting scraped on the side by the open pieces of weave, of the dome. And they had to let go of it. It went rolling, and it went bang, and it ran right into this truck. And, like, we were like, oh, God.
You guys turned the playa into a bowling alley.
Kind of, I don't know, just rolled down. Not everything was early. They were early, so, like, not everything was there, luckily. But, like, this truck got whacked, and, like, the whole side door was just, it was, like, it's like knives in it, right?
Yeah.
Some pieces. And then we rolled it back, and then we were like, it was totally dented, and we're like, oh my God, we are the blight of Burning Man now. We are not a pretty camp, and we're just making fun.
It is seriously fucking amazing that there are not more people hurt every year.
Oh, I
with
know.
the amount of insane shit.
Oh my God, like that was crazy. I mean, we could have hit somebody.
Yeah.
We don't know. And, like, it ended up being really cool. We found somebody at camp, and they were saying, oh my God, of anybody's car, he's, like, the coolest guy. Mm-hmm. So we went back to camp, and there were 60 of us. We said, okay, everybody needs to put in $10. We need to, like, gather what we think, like, an average deductible is if somebody's got, most people have probably, if they have insurance, is a $500 deductible. So we gathered up that, we gathered up some alcohol and other sundries to say that I'm sorry. And handed them off, and he was, like, totally cool. But it's like, I don't know. I mean, it was our responsibility to be citizens to be accountable for that. We could have walked away and never said anything, but that just didn't even occur to us. So I just feel like with bigness and, like, with things happening and, like, I'm totally going to get geeky on you about this. I wonder if Burning Man actually follows the story of Beowulf.
To elaborate.
Okay. So the main, let me see, one of the main conflicts in Beowulf is ancestry versus individual, trying to think of the word that I'm looking at. Individual, the ancestries versus your individual identity, I guess, right? And so the whole idea of Beowulf is that corruption happens when when, if I recall correctly, somebody will tell me if I'm wrong in this library, like the chalice is stolen, right? That's part of the story. And, like, when corruption happens, it is a bigger sign of things happening in the community, because in Beowulf things were contained, and there was this conflict between the in charge and the people who had identities, know? And so I think it's really interesting that we created an experiment in community, and yet we're humans who follow the same patterns we've fallen into hundreds of years after thousands of years, the same. Because Beowulf's story is how old? Like 900, right?
Yeah.
And, like, 1,000 years later, we fall into the same patterns of, you can't do this. Well, why can't I do this? Well, why you can, but I can do this. Or you can't have branding. Well, it's not branding. It's, what is branding? And, like, what is, I mean, we fall into that prey. We created an experiment and community that completely unique, but we still fall into default world patterns. Now, that's not to say that's a bad thing. It's just that's what it is. And, like, so I just think it's really interesting that...
it's the human condition. It's the same, Jungian archetypes that exist throughout history.
So it's the ancestry conflict with the uprising, right? So, and I always said, I don't understand decommodification. We were always big about covering up U-Hauls or whatever we had with funny stuff. And what I think is interesting when people say, well, I don't know, there's all these logos and branding, was like, okay, branding was actually created to feed off of, and marketing feed off of 5 inherent lacking of that people feel. It's about going to the less than about people and marketing to their lesser.
We're talking about sales and marketing.
Yeah, in the default world.
Sure.
And then at Burning Man, what it is like, it is creating an identity so people recognize and can celebrate.
Right.
So it's more like a conscious branding, right? Like, I mean,
a brand, if it's not connected to a for-profit business, is simply it's a form of communication. It's symbols to communicate.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
I'm a brand, you are a brand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just sort of an interesting thing that I just saw. Well, here we replicated that in this space where we were allowed to do anything. We just did the thing we knew, which is what we've done for thousands of times. So it's just funny to think like we do make change, but can we make as much change as maybe the vision was originally? Who knows? Maybe it was just allowing it to unfold.
The idea, I mean, obviously we don't have the people in the room to answer this right now, but like generally I feel like the idea has been that the whole point of Burning Man, if we're talking specifically about Black Rock City, is for this 1 week period to go to the extremes to inspire creativity that we can then take back to our lives. So like these kind of it's not saying that it was. I don't think it was ever supposed to be this like utopia perfect thing. Like I hear like a lot of like angry hippies out there like, you guys still have currency and you guys do the same. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't think they ever meant for it to be, this like utopian society. It was supposed to be an experiment to ignite creativity and new ideas. And that's what it does. You go out there and do this extreme thing and then you come back with something new.
That was about connecting.
Right.
Experiment community is about, like I said before, like having tolerances for things that you don't care about.
Sure.
But honoring somebody else's choice to be a participant in that.
Absolutely.
Without criticism. And maybe actually ask and learn something by bridging that. What makes you interested in that? I'm so totally foreign to that kind of idea of whatever the thing is, or the art that you do, or the, whatever.
Right.
The tuba you play, whatever. It can be, right?
Yeah.
I've always thought of it as experiment community and a city. And even though the guide is music, I've never been about just the music at Burning Man. I didn't start that way, going to follow music, and it's not like, that's just a part of it. Right. And I think literally it was created, the guide was created because we were lazy.
What was the initial, do you remember the exact moment?
Laziness.
Yeah, okay.
3:30 in the morning.
That's a big driving of my life too. Let's just put that on the table. I'm only really good at finishing things fast because I don't want to fucking do it again. Yeah.
Maybe, I think, I don't know, maybe but nobody was riding bikes for like years. Right. So that's one thing. So we all walked places. So from the 3 to 9, you had to walk, and you might get to the man, and there's nothing in between to draw your attention. There's no burn barrels or heated things. It's cold, and you're walking in the middle of nowhere across, and likely not walking in a straight line. Ever. Ever. So it could take you a while, and you go to the few places where there'd be some music, and then you'd be like, I wish I really knew what was going on here, because we just spent an hour and a half getting over here.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I could figure that out. So that was kind of how it birthed. And then I just made, I knew of some of the camps. We had...
So what did you do in that first year? Just reach out to people in default and start laying out a spreadsheet?
Kind of. I don't even know if I have that spreadsheet. I tried going back to see how far I have guides. I think I have 08. Mm-hmm. 08 was still... 08 and 09 was still a spreadsheet. Then it went to a booklet in 10. Mm-hmm. And I think I just started looking because I think we always had theme camps listed, and I just looked for them on the internet as a librarian.
Right.
And if they posted stuff, I would pull it off, and if they had contact, I hadn't, that hadn't started till I contacted them more later, after I'd done it a bit, and I can't scour for everybody's stuff anymore. And
you never got any negativity in those early days. It was just oh, cool, there's a guide out now.
I don't think it was widespread enough for people to complain yet.
Sure, yeah.
Once it got sort of city consciousness, definitely there's people that are naysayers to it. And that's fine, because it's a gift, and not every gift at Burning Man is meant for everybody.
What are they naysaying exactly?
Well, that everyone's just following the spontaneity of running into music out there and enjoying it.
Okay.
It's because of that now people come just for the music, and then which maybe is a part of it. I don't know.
Well, it's an extreme argument. It contributed to a part of the culture that developed in the general Burning Man movement. Yeah. I would say that's a fair statement.
And I don't know
if it's singularly responsible, that's just
I don't know. I don't know if the guide didn't exist, where there'd be less sound camps or less people going for music. I don't know if there's a way to I don't think I have that much
We don't have magic powers or a time
magic
machine.
powers like that. I know exactly, but it's okay. I mean, like not every gift is for everybody. And when friends asked about if I wanted to include the guide data in their app, the Time to Burn app, I for a little bit had to sit on that because it didn't fit with my ideal Burning Man. I literally want to throw people's phones under our tires too and like be present. Yeah. I don't take photos anymore. Although I did take photos probably for the first like 8 years, so I guess I got that out of my system. But it was a Canon camera.
Sure.
Like there wasn't like other stuff you could do. It was you took a photo.
You weren't hashtagging in that exact moment.
My first cameras were like film cameras, 35 millimeter. You didn't get instant gratification even, right? So and sometimes it didn't show up. Let's see. So the people, I was like, okay, the app, and I had to make that decision to be a part of it because, okay, even though I'm bothered by that, like as far as it's not, I will look at it maybe at home, but like I wouldn't pull out my phone and look at it for me. There are people who would enjoy that out there, and it gets the word out, and people can see things, and that is a gift that giving them some joy in finding the things they want. And that's my job as a librarian, is helping people find the information they want. So it kind of fits.
Yeah, you don't get to censor that information. If they're looking for it, here you go.
So I participated in that, and even though like I wasn't doing it for me as a gift, it was a gift to the people who really would want it that way. So for people who don't want it, they don't have to download it. They don't have to print it. They don't have to look at it. Yeah. They can do their own thing.
Can I tell you, by the way, one of my favorite pranks a couple of years ago was I forget which bar it was. It might have been like Black Rock City Diner or something.
Yeah.
They had like their Wi-Fi set up so that you could try to connect to it, but it wasn't connected to any internet. So you'd ask them like, "Hey, is the Wi-Fi working?" Like, yeah, it's just stay on it. It should be resetting right now. So you'd have all these people that just kept trying to connect to their Wi-Fi.
They had a little box looking like Wi-Fi. I love
That's
that.
all they had set up was the router, but not actually connected to any Wi-Fi. Yeah.
See, that's funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
You have to let go of you have to be make fun of yourself when you fall for things like that.
So you started with laziness, and that so resonates with me. I get it.
What was that? My friends were lazy too.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't just me.
We
were cold. We were cold and lazy.
We run in packs. What inspired you to keep doing it, like every year?
My friends were like, "Let's do that again. I love that. It was awesome." And I think I'm trying to think had Friendster, but I think I even shared it on Tribe. Back on Tribe. Yeah, that was a way of getting it. That when that
Shout
happened.
out to Friendster and Tribe.
Yeah, Friendster and Tribe. That kind of got that. That's what I never had a MySpace. It's true. That I just put things out on those, and that's when people would pay attention. And then people were kind of contacting me, and then I just started finding emails and just reaching out and saying, "Hey, do you want to be a part of it? Do you want to be a part of it? Do you want to be a part of it?" And at this point, only camps that want to be a participant are in it. I don't add things that people don't want, and the camps will choose whether some people miss deadline, still. And
only some.
No, I mean there are some, but some of the ones that hadn't messed them before. Established camps have. And I just can't you can't because then everybody be hold the date.
Right.
But yeah, so some people choose not to be in it because they're we can't handle the capacity of more people. We already know it's going to be full and we can't have more bodies showing up half the city in a small space. It's not safe, literally not safe. So that's really been interesting to see that. And I this year it's really cool because there's so many different camps that I have not heard of showing up in the lists this year that are I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what kind of music camps they are or sound camps. And there's lots of live music too. I need to be clear that it's hard to herd the sound camp crew because they're running ragged, right? And the burners, we're all kind of hard to herd.
Yeah.
We're all cats.
Yeah.
Can't hurt any of us. We're once you get more than 3 of us, don't try to leave or go anywhere because you're going to be at home for 5 hours.
Ooh, what's that?
If there's 3 of you together, you should leave now because if you add a 4th, or it's never going to happen.
Hey, where are you guys going? Oh, hold on a second. Let me get my headlamp.
And the second that you leave, you've lost 2 people, right?
Yeah.
So, this is our nature, right? Because that's how we do things out there. So, and then the live music, that they've, until they knew that they could be a part. I mean, I kept saying I want to find music because I'm a music person, love all music, and it just happened to have a lot of electronic music because that's what sort of was out there and was showing up first that I could, you were able to find and track and I could message. And then I've always wanted live music in it. And so I was really excited, like, since 14 and 15, really, there's been a lot more of that. Yeah. And, like, you don't have to have a 8 o'clock lineup, 9 o'clock lineup to be in it. You could just say, I'm a jam band from 8 to midnight. Yeah. And I'll put your camp in there. Or we do karaoke. I specifically put karaoke in there, too, because it's fun. Yeah. And so there's, like, live band karaoke. Who doesn't want to do that, right? Or they have a live band playing. It's sort of upping your karaoke game a little.
Absolutely.
So, and now there's, like, the Playa Choir and the Playa Pops Orchestra. I mean, like, things have really keep growing musically that I like. And, anybody where the music is the focus. Yeah. Where it's not a theme where you just play recorded music, but where you're really making the music as the focus of the event at your camp, then you can be in the guide. That's like what I draw the line at, like, you can't have a Grateful Dead party. That's a party with Grateful Dead music. It's not, if the Grateful Dead, jam band, old-timey people were coming together, or, the spin-offs, then yes, that's a music event. That's different than, like, just playing it off of...
When you said that, all I could think about was the Madonna Power Hour, because that was one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah. So, yeah.
What, if anything, has been the most surprising development to you musically in how Burning Man's developed over the years?
Musically? I just think the camps bringing different experiences and really wanting to give people... Actually, I should back up. The thing that I think is really interesting, and this is sort of a side spin from the question, because this is really what I find intriguing, is instead of thinking about how genres really reflect, and I've often asked the question, did we create a dust beats genre? Yeah. Or did we just evolve a sound? Did we...
Is it dust beats genre?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just calling dust beats.
No, dust beats was actually going to be the name of our other podcast, Alkaline, before we chose Alkaline.
But I own that domain, so you don't.
Yeah. Damn, I knew that.
Me.
Good thing we chose Alkaline.
Because I thought maybe I could collectively gather up burn music to share, give, organized music that's disorganized. Yeah, that's what I did. So, I don't know if, I've asked people this before because I don't, I know what I like, but I don't know if there's been, is there an evolution that people can say has happened because of the desert? There's definitely collaborations.
Absolutely.
But I don't know because they're influenced by so much of the larger world of the genres of music they play in. But it'd be interesting to see what other people think of that, because I don't know if I know of a specific thing. Some people would maybe say yes or no, but I don't know if you can really put your finger on it being a desert reason, right?
Yeah.
But I think too, the thing that I really love, that I'm totally love walking around to different camps that do music and our sound camps, is I look at the architecture, because there's really a psychology to setting up a sound camp, and it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive, but there really is a process in which, and I'll use Opulent Temple because they've used a similar setup for. They build up their main stage and their DJ setup very specifically, right? So that can change, where they've made it more elaborate and beautiful and up and fire. Like, they've always had fire, but you know what I mean by a more beautiful spectacle for us to stare at.
Yeah.
But they've always had the back spaces and stanchions kind of for you to be on. And so it's a triangle. Even though it's very open, you still psychologically enter and exit an experience.
Right.
And the places where I felt weird is when I'm walking down H Street and 5 o'clock, and there's a sound camp and it's blaring and it's just going out into the open street, and it's like I feel like I'm attacked and I'm not given the opportunity to consent to experience, because there's no barrier.
Right.
Funky Town's another one that's good, that where there's the front and then they have the back space where you can dance, where you enter and exit the experience physically and not just with the oral sounds that you're experiencing.
2 years ago, we camped with Playground, Carl Cox's camp.
Yeah.
That was a fascinating dance floor setup, because you had the DJ in the middle, and it was like 4 dance floor settings around it, but then you could also dance sort of on top of it, but then on the ground.
Yeah.
It was really cool to watch that development.
Yeah. And I think they've evolved that too, because there was years where it was just open play when they were in the 2, and some of the spaces have that where I guess the 10 and 2 allows for that a little more, in that people expect it to be going outward.
Right.
But I just find the psychology of that. So like people should just pay attention if where you feel you are enjoying the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is because there's a created containment, even if it's just minorly created. And where are the places where you feel like, I don't know why I feel awkward and uncomfortable in this, if they didn't really make a wall there, an end or a backspace so you contain yourself.
Right.
And
so
I think,
set and setting.
and that's sort of like, and I think in entertainment world that happens where there's a goal of going, I mean, their goal is bar, so you spend money, dance floor, maybe bathrooms are not in that, I don't know. But we don't have that, monetary indicator, but it can still be in there for like how they want to people move people in their experience. And so I think sometimes people bring that out, which is kind of cool to see and put it in a decommodified setting.
I worked for years and years in nightlife, and so I got to experience a lot of different clubs and dance floors, and to me it was always just shocking that there were still people that worked in the industry that did not see the value of a very clearly defined dance floor. Because I just saw that every club and every bar, whatever, that was successful had a clearly defined dance floor. You're either stepping into it or you're stepping out of it.
Yes.
That's where your energy starts to vibe with other people's energy. That's where your vibrations start aligning with others.
My big dream for a dance floor for Burning Man for years was to create a super gigantic rotating circle. Because then, how we've all been on the dance floor in that most unfortunate spot called the pathway that's suddenly created, and then everybody's always walking past you, and you're like, God. But when you are in a circle that rotates, everybody radiates out. No, there's no one path, and so it was just an interesting thing. Like, I thought that'd be really cool, and so ridiculous to have a circular moving, probably totally unsafe. It wouldn't be moving fast, clearly, but even then, people would.
You're making me think of like shag carpet, like 1970s.
I don't know, maybe just the disco lighting floor or something on that.
We would be amiss though if we did not mention though the dance floors that Burners have done a pretty fucking good job of creating out in the middle of nowhere. Mayan Warrior pulls up and there's 1,000 people in front of it.
Yeah.
Somehow
that's
the energy
different
picks
too.
up.
And I think with art cars and the mutant vehicles that do music, the psychology is expected to be, I'm up at something and we're out in the open. So again, it's where we kind of unconsciously play off of things that are the experience.
Right.
So that's, but there's usually, and even art cars, now they're either pairing up or making a shape. So you are seeing them in the forefront and energetically, or there's art nearby. So they might use some of that to create that sort of containment of entering and exiting. But sometimes even just the group of people, like an art car, is entering and exiting. Yeah. And if you step too far away, you're now away from that, even though you're like only 5 feet.
Yeah.
Right? You're like,
why does it feel different?
Why did we leave the party? It's right there. I'm right here. I needed to look for something with my headlamp. I didn't go far,
How, so we were saying at the beginning of the show that you're not burning this year.
No.
Have you thought about, are you going to do this forever?
I don't know. I have to say, after going to Africa Burn in 2017, I was highly inspired to experience more of the regional burns internationally, because, I was really lucky in that I got to connect with some founders there in the DMV camp. I ended up camping in the DMV camp in Africa Burn. And Paul Fletcher and his crew that run that. I got to volunteer and tag vehicles, which is a very different experience in Africa Burn, because the goal was not where we are elevated to at Black Rock City, because they have to have a certain level of, everything has to be really permanently altered to be considered, because there's so many people who want to do art cars, right, from Black Rock City.
Okay.
But in Africa Burn, it was, were they making an effort to be creative? Because it could be their one vehicle, and they don't have another vehicle, and maybe they drive 6 other families to work, because we have an unconscious level of privilege
Oh yeah.
that we can burn so much shit, right? And not have to save it to build orphanages for people who would otherwise be sleeping in the dirt, which is what happens in South Africa.
Yeah.
People would take apart and dismantle buildings instead of burn them to donate to the Africa Burn Outreach, which they do a lot year round. Like they were raising funds to give a donkey and a cart to somebody, and that changed a life. Like when I see and hear that, I'm like, wow, I gotta check the privilege at the door there a lot about what we have, and it's just amazing. So I think that experience just allowed me to really appreciate that they were trying to give people the experience of Burning Man, to the culture, the beliefs, the values, the principles, and not turn them away on a technicality.
Yeah.
You know? So somebody showed up on a motorbike, but they were a piece of sushi. Like they had created a framework, and then they had a silk screen thing that looked like a piece of sushi. But they lifted it off. But it wasn't, heavily changed.
Yeah.
But it was cool. Like, or somebody else just had to go back and decorate it. And I just really appreciate that they are about drawing in, not just bringing in more of the native communities too from South Africa, you know, not just British descent folk or people who moved there from Europe or international burners or, people who moved from there. Yeah. But it was neat.
At the very beginning of this conversation, a lot of what we were talking about was about your experiences and thoughts on how much newer burners, younger burners potentially that aren't understanding necessarily where some of this comes from. And I kept thinking about, we did a associate producer, Tori Massey's in the room, and that's how you guys met. You guys met at Africa Burn. Yeah. That's why you're here right now on this show.
Or was I on the radio and you heard something? What was I can't remember what it was.
Oh yeah, Will and I were bicycling past the Africa Burn radio station, and we actually heard you speaking. We sat outside and listened to the end of it. It was like the last 5 minutes. Yeah. And waited for you to come out, and then you hung out with us.
Yeah. This is how this show ended up happening. But I remember that's so I sat with Tori and Will on that episode where we talked about Africa Burn, and it's fascinating. They have the 11th principle there, which is the each one teach one. Yeah, is that correct?
It's a great one.
So that's even as you're describing this right now, like the privilege that we have living here in the United States, and we get to burn the living shit out of everything. It just got me thinking a lot about how that 11th principle exists in a country that probably has a very different experience with privilege than we do.
Well, I mean, apartheid only ended in the early 90s, and there's still a lot of fallout and repercussions from having had that for so long, and people adjusting and a lot of different opinions about it and frustrations, and then whether or not things are happening for people, that the government's supposed to give people houses, but there are not enough houses being built for reparations, and just interesting things to sort of watch as you're trying to, and it's just people trying to figure it out and dismantle something that's been pretty huge, right? And so I think that the Africa Burn outreach folks are very highly aware of that and sensitive, and draw in community members and find out.
Remembering history is perhaps more important in their culture, which is like something it's interesting about American culture. And this is where a lot of American culture clashes with a lot of other parts of the world. I'm Persian, my family's from Iran. A lot of Eastern cultures, you go East, you go Europe, there's a much stronger memory of history. Yeah. And Americans are very, just by nature, very forward thinking. I'm thinking about tomorrow. I've already forgotten about yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that, in their culture, this thing kind of came out of their culture, which is each one teach one. And in our culture, there's still, we're losing some of that a little bit, and which is a reflection of American culture to some extent. Yeah.
And I think when being there, just listening to them talk, the founders, Robert Wynack and Paul Jorgensen and Paul Fletcher, just being able to sit at their little kitchen table and BS with them and hear about their experiences. These are all people who helped found other regionals in Australia as well, and some other things, and help with Africa Burn. That we had this conversation of, leave no trace is fine and dandy, but what about leaving a legacy? Which was where the idea was for this year.
MG. Sorry, that's
It's all good. So the leave a legacy concept from that conversation is where I came back and said, well, this year I don't want to just ask for Kickstarter to pay for printing, which always felt a little off anyway.
Yeah.
Like, not off in that it just didn't, it felt two-dimensional. I think it felt two-dimensional. So I wanted to do something different. And so this year the guide was produced because I had a burner friend who's willing to pay for the production of it under the challenge that I raise $11,000 to build a clean water well in Ghana to provide water for a village.
Wow.
And so the promotion went out for that, and that we were able to fund one full water well. But I'm thinking now we're at like, there's no reason why we can't fund two.
Yeah.
So we're going to see if we can do that. I wasn't sure if we would fund one. I wasn't sure, I'm going to try this and see that, like, if you donate to also build a well, then the guide also comes out. Like, it's all connected. And why don't we leave a legacy that's going to be lasting and not just, I want something bigger. So, so the fundraiser, the GoFundMe fundraiser is still going on, and I'm sure you guys will have the link for
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely.
Because I want to continue to afterburn and see where we go with it, with finishing the circle of things and seeing if people haven't heard of it or didn't get the chance to read their emails, because they're packing and leaving, that it was really about making a difference and making lasting change. And so that's pretty amazing that I connected with a nonprofit in Washington that is an all volunteer board, and they do an accountability and sustainability project where the community in the village in Ghana has to both come up with a small portion of money where they all commit, like a water district. Mm-hmm. So there's some ownership. They all have to be participate in being present for the drilling, so they see it happen and see how the parts go together. So if something falls or loosens, they know what to do and learn. Wow. And that it's this whole sustainability where I know a lot of organizations or wells go dry because things break, and this organization is really committed to making sure they don't. So literally, $100 provides water for upwards of 20 people for upwards of 20 years if the well can be consistently maintained. That's pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
And the most amazing thing from that was I was talking to the vice president of the organization Water Access Now, and they were saying to me they had gone and spoken with villages to say, after you've had a water for a year, what is something that's changed your life about it. And one mother looked matter-of-factly at the interviewer and said, "None of my children died this year."
Wow.
Meaning the expectation every other year is because of so much illness from water, somebody dies every year. I didn't have to bury my child this year. Like, wow, we don't have to do that, right? It just made me feel like I am now a part of a greater legacy that I can be a part of. And so I was really inspired by those conversations at Africa Burn, and that's how I want to show up. And I think that I have those kind of conversations, and so me going into the greater community in the world and learning is how I can step into using my connections and influence and this guide as a way of inspiring others to participate in making a bigger change in the world.
That's incredible.
So
my question was about to be, what's next for Rockstar Librarian?
Yeah,
this is a fascinating. Wow, what an amazing direction! Like this thing that you started out of laziness and turned into.
I know, right?
Turned into this cool thing that so many of us look forward to, so that we don't have to do those extra hikes that you guys used to do. We'll go find the music we want. And now you're able to shift it into even a level of new purpose that you could have never imagined from the beginning.
No, and I was really inspired just by so many of the people that were doing things, even on small levels, there to make a change and a difference, and doing one thing at a time, one small thing if they could, and if you can make it bigger, great. So, I don't know what I love the idea of, we'll see. I don't know if I have a burner friend who's going to be willing to pay for it again, to be produced and printed, so that we can do it again. But I'd love to create another cause next year, and that was always be creating a difference in this world that's bigger than just our city 1 week a year,
That's incredible. that's pretty much the most amazing example I could possibly think of to end today's conversation.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really incredible. Yeah, we'll have all those links up.
Yeah,
obviously, all the links are at Rockstar Librarian as well. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've done for the community. Thank you so much for being such an amazing example of what it could, like what we could be, everything that we're all working on, all these directions. Like it's all ultimately, ideally, we're all going towards a similar place that you're going, which is to be able to take the good from what we've built here, from these us goofing around and dancing in the middle of the desert, and how we can channel that into doing something better.
I think it would have been so easy for me to remain in the pattern of the experience of going to Burning Man as I had it. And if I wasn't putting conscious awareness to wanting to step into a greater place and space and take the risk, have the courage to put myself out there and say, would people support this? It wouldn't have happened. So we can be change makers by stepping up and being conscious of every year just leveling up, whatever that may be. It doesn't have to be a cause. It could be something you're doing out there, or participating in a different way, or a different art project that you're giving your hand in, or maybe it is doing some other regionals around the United States, something where you're just stretching yourself. Because like I said, like for me, this is the year for stretch in other ways in my life. And going to Burning Man for the 18th time, I've done it so well and know how to do it so well that it's not a stretch as far as a personal growth stretch. It could be for participating in different activities and things, but I'm trying to find what that next thing will be. But I hadn't gone for 2 years, so I don't know. I got the idea from here, and now I got to step it up and maybe participate in a different way out there.
That's so cool. It definitely answered my earlier question too, I think, before we started recording, which is like, how much longer are you going to do this? And it's like, now that it's connected to other bigger things, this could very well...
I'm more motivated, definitely, to continue it and put in the work and to continue to make systems in place to make it better. And, it is, if nobody knows this, there's no real they. It is the Time for Burn app folks who help with the database, and me, and my designer. And I'm not even sure how to build a team around this to help people with this, but I think systems in place. We're always trying to improve it. And I know sometimes there are mistakes, and I'm human. So I apologize if things get in the wrong place or in the wrong spot. I am not a music producer. I'm a librarian doing my best. And if anybody has suggestions, I'm always open to that. I'm open for feedback, and it's okay. So I want that. I'm okay and open to that. So
I think that's actually, just to close it out, that's actually, I think, to me, has always been one of the most important parts of the Burning Man culture and Burning Man experience. It's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing their best. And sometimes we just duct tape some shit together. And
hope it doesn't blow away. Right?
Hope it doesn't blow away. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kay. This is awesome.
You are now listening to the sounds of DJ Dane. This set was recorded late Monday night / early Tuesday morning on the 747 Big Imagination at the Breaks on a Plane party. It was the inaugural set for 747 this year, which I think still might be on Playa. Last report I got was that the team from District was out there saving the day. So that story is still developing. I'm not speaking on it too much because I don't have too much information right now, but I'm just going to just completely my own personal opinion. I don't think that Burning Man's permit is in danger. Yeah, it sucks that it's stuck out there, but I think it's a lot of sincere people doing their best. Anyway, you can find more of DJ Dane over at soundcloud.com/DJ/Dane. That's DJ-DANE. Also on Facebook.com/DJ Dane Music. That's DJ DANE Music. He's also on Instagram at DJ.Dane. And I did not know that you could put dots in Instagram handles. Please give us a like on Facebook and join us on the Facebook group. And please leave us a review on iTunes. All of these links are over at burnerpodcast.com. The more reviews and input and social media interaction that we get from you guys, the more of our friends can find the show. You can connect with me on all of these social medias at Mr. Arash. That's MRARASH. Maybe shoot a message when you do that, by the way, because I have a couple of hundred friend requests, and I don't know which one of them are bots and which one of them are you guys. So leave some sort of a message. That would be excellent. Burner Podcast is produced by Rubble Dharma, along with associate producer Lee Hemingway and Tori Massey, associate producers, and our network music editor Navjit Sarna. The show is available on all the podcast platforms. Our opening theme music, America's Horse with No Name Remix, is produced by Joman. Check out his music over at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. We love you, dear listeners. Bye. Until next time, love and light and all that other crap. Take us out, DJ Dane.
empty convent. This musical bomb threat offset your defense. It's been another competitor better than we since. Some of you brothers sound like repetitive recess. We release the repressed stress.
She dancing for dollars. She got a thing for that Gucci, that Fendi, that Prada, that BCBG, Burberry, Dolce and Gabbana. She feed them fools fantasies, they pay her cause they want her. I spit a little G, man, and my gang got her. An hour later, had her ass up in the Ramada. Them trick niggas in the ear saying they think about her. I got the bitch by the bar trying to get a drink about her. She like my style, she like my smash, she like the way I talk. She from the country, think she like me cause I'm from New York. I ain't that nigga trying to holler cause I want some head. I'm that nigga trying to holler cause I want some bread. I could care less how she perform when she in the bed. Bitch at that track, catch a date and come and pay the kid. Look, baby, this is simple, you can't see. You fucking with me, you fucking with a P.I.M.B. People talking about me, baby. Say I'm doing you wrong, doing you wrong. Well, don't you worry, baby, don't worry. Cause I'm right here, right here, right here, right here at home.
True indeed. Yes, I catch wrecking, that's word on my seed. I'm guaranteed to give you what you need. One blood, everybody like Junior Reed. Wake up every morning, yo, I must succeed. Nationwide rockers make the world stampede. Yo, Willie make me roll some weed. Man, charge nigga, now I must proceed. So we about to make moves, set speed. Beast to baby fight, Q-tip, I need Shahid. Watch me down, you act like Apollo Creed. Body blows, busting your shit, making you bleed. Just feed off dynamic flows and tip heed. Need more information, homeboy, than just read. You can read all about the pure breed. Do the mobile, that's my new depend by scene. When I step up in the place, say yo, I step correct. You all in check. I got that head nod shit that make you break your neck. I got you all in check. And you know we come through to rep the discotheque. I got you all in check. Throw your hands up in the air, don't ever disrespect. I got you all in check. If I'm the leader of a family mentor, breathing, getting the paper with joy. And that's what I'm in my door. If it don't, you're going to be show.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice, 'cause I speak of the pompadour of love.
down, it's dirty, get low 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 down. scab should be sold in bags. Boost up the price tag, make a whack rapper mad. Rely on my right side, secure and I take tight, tasty, tangible to your man, the roll clapper.
Yo, don't compute, perhaps you need a boost. A magical flute, some nose candy to tooth. Before you get loose, express and tap the roof. You claim you got the juice, but you lame and out the loop.
And for you confused bastards, tune up the blues masters quick. The grip up like cruise fast and sound clash and critical mass. Pitiful blast, they've been deflected. Hypodermic pimples, I flash, get you infected.
Theological word advanced, been too legit to quit before the hammer of pants. The heritage, the pen converge words to some and stay blacker than the New York Harlem Renaissance. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty. Express and tap the roof. Get low down and dirty. Before you get loose, get low down and dirty.
You claim you got the juice.
You get low down and dirty.
Perhaps you need a boost.
Throwing down. Are you ready to rock steady? South Central out to the west side. Are you ready?
Rhythm full of culture, y'all.
It's now time. 1 for the money, a 2 for the show, a 3 for the winners. Come on, let's go. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty. Get low down and dirty like the Illmore Red. Get low down and dirty.
burnerpodcast.com. burnerpodcast.com.